Imagine the Roman Colosseum glowing not from swords but from gladiators' million lira smiles. Picture burly warriors strutting out, dazzling the crowd. Not with fancy footwork, but with teeth so white they'd outshine a marble statue. Legend says gladiators flaunted flawless chompers. Maybe their real secret weapon was a dazzling flash of pearly whites. Well, let's pull that myth out like a stubborn molar. In truth, dental hygiene in ancient Rome was more rustic scrub than minty fresh. Their toothpaste was a gritty mashup of crushed bones, oyster shells, and sometimes even the ashes of the dearly departed. Nothing says morning breath like grandma's ashes on your brush. Gladiators mostly fueled up on grains and beans. Great for stamina, terrible for gums, resulting in some seriously tragic dental tales. Archaeologists have uncovered plenty of gladiator skeletons sporting worn down, cavity-ridden, or completely missing teeth. Toothless grins aside, no epic battle ever kicked off with, "Are you not entertained by my flossing?" If toothpaste ads existed then, you'd bet they'd feature emperors, never warriors with spinach stuck between their teeth. So next time you picture the Colosseum crowd pleaser, remember, the only thing truly blinding was the dust, not their dental work. Just as the dazzling smiles of gladiators spark curiosity, the distinctive fashion of the French Revolution era, powdered wigs, captures our imagination. Picture a Paris street, and pop culture has you picturing everyone in mile-high white wigs ducking guillotines like it's a powdered hair party from hell. The Revolution's often dressed like a costume drama where even bakers rocked powdered pompadours, because nothing screams down with tyranny like a flour-dusted wig. But here's the twist. The wig craze fizzled out before the Bastille even got cozy. Louis XVI's grandpa, Louis XV, saw those towering curls reach their powdered peak. By 1789, wigs shouted "aristocrat," louder than a t-shirt screaming, "Tax me more." Revolutionaries took off their wigs like a last mic drop, flaunting au naturel hair as the ultimate burner to the upper crust. Most working Parisians? They couldn't afford fancy wigs any more than they could throw a soirée at Versailles. They were busy scraping together bread. Wearing a powdered wig in 1793 was more than a fashion faux pas. It was basically a decapitation invitation. A few diehards clung to their coiffures, but most ditched them faster than you can say, sans culotte. Turns out, true revolutionary chic was all about keeping your locks, and your head, right where they belonged. While powdered wigs defined an era, the image of Vikings wearing horned helmets presents another vivid, yet inaccurate, historical stereotype. Picture a Viking in a horned helmet, and you've just described every Halloween costume aisle. Not the gritty Viking age itself. The classic image: roaring Norsemen charging into battle, horned helmets gleaming, looking more ready for a Wagner opera than a real skirmish. But here's the twist. This theatrical flair owes more to 19th century set designers than to actual history. Archaeologists haven't uncovered a single genuine battle-ready horned helmet from authentic Viking digs. Real Viking headgear? Hornless and strictly functional, designed to keep their noggins from becoming battle trophies. Now, imagine a Viking warrior trying to squeeze through a doorway. If horned helmets were standard issue, raids would involve more interior decorating than pillaging. Besides, horns double as perfect grab handles for your enemies. Not exactly the pinnacle of armor innovation. Sure, some ceremonial helmets boasted dramatic protrusions, but those stayed far away from the fray. Blame pop culture for indoctrinating us with Viking cosplay. Real Viking art shows sleek, streamlined headgear, probably to dodge baggage fees, but definitely for practical reasons. From misunderstood Viking helmets to the rugged Wild West cowboys who, contrary to popular belief, maintained surprising cleanliness. Saddle up for a reality check. Did Wild West cowboys really strut around like shampoo commercial models, or is Hollywood just horsing around? Let's lasso this myth faster than a runaway steer. Picture silver screen cowboys, wind-tousled hair, crisp shirts, gliding into golden sunsets like they're auditioning for a jeans ad. The truth? The only thing consistently blowing in the real West was dust, straight into every orifice a cowboy owned. Actual cowboy hygiene? Think less spa day and more dust bath deluxe. Bathing options were about as rare as a well-behaved saloon patron. Rivers, if you were lucky, public bathhouses if you had cash, or just a splash with a bucket and a prayer. Clothes? Worn until they developed their own personalities, and maybe a postal address. Soap was a luxury, often swapped out for sand or sheer grit. Odor control? Cowboys leaned on strong coffee, cigar smoke, and raw, unshakable swagger. So why do Hollywood cowboys sparkle? Simple, movie magic. Because the real smell of the frontier was less eau de cologne and more eau de cattle. The only thing that gleamed in the Wild West was a lucky tooth, if you had one. Similarly, roaming Romans are often imagined in bright purple togas, a stark contrast to the gritty image of frontline cowboys. Imagine ancient Rome, a city awash in purple togas, like everyone just stumbled out of a grape juice commercial. Common wisdom has us picturing Romans strutting about drenched in violet, with Caesar's fashion show on permanent loop. But let's curb the chariot. This myth's racing way ahead. Not every citizen got to rock the royal grape. Most looked less like disco emperors and more like well-wrapped scrolls. Here's the skinny. Purple dye, Tyrian purple, for the trivia buffs, came from thousands of tiny sea snails and cost a king's ransom. We're talking sell your villa kind of pricey. Only emperors and a few big shots could legally flaunt this royal hue. The average Roman? Their toga, if they bothered at all, was about as white or beige as a loaf of day-old bread. So unless you ran a snail dynasty or enjoyed ticking off both the fashion police and the real ones, purple togas were strictly off limits. True power? That's refusing to dry clean grape stains. Though Roman society might conjure images of vibrant colors and grandeur, the following Middle Ages are often mislabeled as dull and dark. Picture the Middle Ages as a Monty Python sketch. Mud, darkness, and a chorus of "Nigh." But was that really the whole saga? For ages, we've been served the legend of medieval muck. Towns so foul pigeons allegedly needed shoes, peasants scraping by on grim gruel, while nobles dodged rogue chamber pots with a delicate waft of perfume. But hold your nose. History's fresher than you think. Sure, it wasn't exactly antiseptic paradise, but bathhouses were the medieval equivalent of a spa day. Steamy, social, and buzzing with gossip thicker than any eucalyptus oil, which, spoiler, wasn't in the mix. Peasant diets weren't just sadness flavored with suspicious ale. They featured bread, dairy, veggies, fish, and even a dash of medieval culinary flair. And literacy? Not just for monks clutching dusty manuscripts. Monasteries, cathedral schools, and even some regular townsfolk could read. Letters, not just those grumpy saint cartoons. Cities boasted paved streets, early garbage collection, universities, Aristotle, because why not? And festivals so lively the only gloom was the dim torchlight, not the IQ. So let's retire the term Dark Ages and brighten up the record with a Middle Ages that's colorful, bustling, and, surprise, not totally rank. In contrast to these misconceptions about the Middle Ages, the mysterious ninjas are famously thought to have dressed entirely in black. Picture a ninja, all black, all stealth, basically a shadow armed with throwing stars. You're probably picturing someone who shops exclusively in the edgy art student section, head-to-toe noir, blending in like a Wi-Fi signal at grandma's. But hold your nunchaku! That does black go with my shurikens look? More theater costume than tactical garb. The all-black ensemble tiptoed onto the scene from Japanese theater, where stagehands dressed in black to vanish like cafeteria food. When those same folks moonlighted as ninjas in plays, noir became the accidental uniform. In reality, ninjas were likelier to rock farmer chic, blending in with crowds and poultry alike. If real ninjas wore all black, they'd probably trip over chickens before taking out targets. Midnight blue or earthy browns. That's the real espionage palette. History's ninja dress code? Less shadow warrior, more business casual for covert ops. So yes, the all-black ninja is about as historically accurate as a samurai with a selfie stick. Now let's sneak into the world of real ninja tactics. Just as the ninja's all-black attire is a persistent notion, the appearance of Cleopatra has often been whitewashed to resemble Elizabeth Taylor. If Hollywood is to be believed, Cleopatra's eyeliner was as legendary as her empire, and her face was none other than Elizabeth Taylor's. Who wouldn't want to rule from both a throne and a makeup chair, right? The myth of Cleopatra as the ultimate glam queen, with Liz Taylor's smolder and perfectly arched brows, gripped the world's imagination after the 1963 Technicolor blockbuster. Since then, we've half expected ancient queens to demand smoky eyes and a wind machine on cue. But step off the silver screen and into the dusty realm of actual history, or at least numismatics, and the story gets a little less vogue and a bit more final exam all-nighter. Ancient coins and sculptures reveal Cleopatra with sharp features, a prominent nose, and a look more politics major pulling an all-nighter than Oscar's red carpet. Contemporary Greek and Roman observers, hardly her cheerleaders, praised her magnetic wit, multilingual finesse, and her uncanny knack for making the most ironclad Roman knees buckle. Her dynasty, Macedonian Greek, neither the Cleopatra of papyrus daydreams nor paparazzi snapshots. She conquered not with a killer mascara wand, but with rhetoric sharper than any spear. Beauty may be in the eye of the coin minter, and clearly the casting director too. Similarly, the dramatic tales of witches from history typically end with the assumption that they were all burned at the stake. When you picture a witch trial, is your first image a roaring bonfire? Pop culture loves to toss witches onto flaming pyres, villagers brandishing pitchforks, and enough firewood stacked to fuel a medieval weekend barbecue. The myth, hapless witches across Europe, regularly reduced to ashes by torch-wielding mobs in an annual BBQ of the damned. But let's flip the script. In reality, burning at the stake was a rare spectacle, especially in England. The go-to method? Good old-fashioned hanging. The same ropes you might use to hang laundry doubled as instruments of medieval justice. But hold on, there's more! Some witches endured bizarre tests that resembled carnival dunk tanks, or simply rotted away in prison cells. Even the infamous Salem witch trials, America's poster child for witch panic, served up zero bonfires. They went straight for the ropes, skipping the kindling. So, if you showed up to a witch trial with marshmallows in hand, disappointment was guaranteed. Turns out, witches feared rope burn a lot more than a fiery roast. Moving from these grim images, America's founding fathers surprisingly had reputations for lively celebrations akin to modern parties. You might picture America's founding fathers as nothing but powdered wigs and pearl-clutching primness, but beneath those ruffled coats beat the hearts of 1,000 wild keg parties. History tends to serve up Washington, Jefferson, and Hamilton as buttoned-up gentlemen, too busy inventing democracy to get rowdy. But surprise! The colonial era was anything but dry, unless you count martinis. Ditch the dainty teacups. These guys loved their booze. Take Washington's 1787 farewell bash. 60 guests downed 60 bottles of claret, 54 of Madeira, 22 of porter, and 8 of hard cider. Hydration? Merely an option. The pursuit of happiness? Often involved chasing down colonial punch with a stiff drink. Debates quickly morphed from solemn political discourse into full-on wrestling matches and duels. America's earliest policies were hammered out literally, shot for shot, hammer in hand. Some folks swear the Declaration of Independence still carries wine stains and a whiskey ring around its seal. Cheers to democracy. Glass raised high and spirits even higher. While the Founding Fathers enjoyed their social freedoms, samurai adhered to strict honorable codes that governed their every action. Picture samurai as ancient Japanese Jedi, laser swords missing, but honor dialed up to 11. Pop culture paints them as temple-bound stoics, endlessly reciting Bushido quotes and debating which angle screams duty the loudest. The reality? If samurai actually followed Bushido like a recipe, their diaries would read like motivational posters. Live. Laugh. Sword fight. But here's where the story gets messier than a sushi roll gone rogue. The Bushido Code, often brandished as the samurai's timeless rulebook, was more like a greatest hits album dropped years after the band split. In real life, many samurai bent the rules with more flair than a ninja sneaking through a yoga class. Spying, scheming, switching sides on a whim. Sometimes Bushido took a coffee break while "Don't Get Stabbed" ran the show. And don't be fooled. Not all samurai wore noble birthright like a badge. Plenty clawed their way up from peasantry, molding their code as flexibly as their armor plates. Flawless martial saints? Nah, more like complicated humans in snazzy armor. Sometimes hungry, sometimes heroic, and always just a bit unpredictable. From the disciplined world of samurai, we shift to the youthful and romanticized story of Pocahontas, portrayed as a young woman caught in a whirlwind romance. Everyone loves a whirlwind romance. Just ask your aunt who met her soulmate during a 2-hour layover. But is that really the Pocahontas story? The popular myth casts Pocahontas as a love-struck ingenue, swept off her feet by Englishman John Smith, all starry-eyed glances and doomed destiny. If you're picturing text messages full of hearts and moonlit strolls, hold up right there. The truth? Pocahontas was about 10 or 11 when she met Smith, a little young for candlelit dinners and definitely not shopping for a colonial boyfriend. If she had a Tinder profile, it'd say, "Too young for you, John Smith." No love letters, no longing looks. Smith was more like a curious grown-up she occasionally had to rescue. Pocahontas did marry eventually, but it was to John Rolfe, a tobacco farmer, in a match that was diplomacy over desire. Their union was a peace treaty rolled in tobacco leaves, not swept away by romance. So calling her and Smith a couple? That's like saying Harry Potter and Dumbledore were about to elope. History. Crushing Hallmark fantasies since 1607. The real Pocahontas story isn't a rom-com. It's the coming-of-age saga of a young woman caught between clashing worlds. Less love at first sight, more survival at first contact. Turning from tales of early American history to the modern age, where everyone in 1969 gathered to watch the moon landing live on television. Picture this. July 20th, 1969. The whole world, or so we're told, fixated on Neil Armstrong sashaying across the moon in real time. The legend? Humanity clasped cosmic hands, united in front of their glowing screens for TV's grandest live event. The reality? More like a celestial patchwork quilt, stitched with gaps. Back then, everyone really meant anyone with steady electricity, a working TV, and, ideally, more than 3 channels. In many countries, broadcast rights were slow-walking the signal or non-existent altogether, leaving live moonwalking to show up days, sometimes weeks, later, if it showed up at all. Some Americans missed the lunar dance thanks to graveyard shifts, UFO-level skepticism, or TVs that only powered on after a strategic whack. And in the Soviet Union? Buzz about Armstrong's cosmic tap dance barely made the headlines, ranked a notch above the potato harvest update. While over 1 billion people reportedly caught it live, billions more got their moon fix via Tomorrow's News or Uncle Bob grumbling weird static-filled radio reports at family dinner. Turns out, humanity's grand, live lunar unification was less a seamless broadcast and more a game of cosmic telephone. Tuning in, tuning out, and sometimes just plain missing the signal. Despite the advancement of media coverage, we still look back to events like the Salem witch trials, where the accused were widely believed to be innocent women. If you think witches were just mischievous women with pointy hats, the Salem witch trials are here to hex that idea. Legend has it that defenseless women were tossed into hysteria's bonfire for daring to own a cat or crack open a book. But surprise! Salem's guest list of witches featured about 20 folks. Not just women. Men snagged a spot on the noose, too. Did Salem invent equal opportunity persecution? Because no one was safe from suspicion. Blame bounced wherever local gossip, grudges, or a suspiciously bold attitude aimed. Had a pulse and a strong personality? Congrats! Your neighbor just might have called the sheriff. Kids weren't spared either. Victims ranged from a 4-year-old girl all the way up to an 80-year-old man. Suddenly, Salem's family reunions required more legal counseling than potato salad. The trials made modern reality TV courtrooms look like Judge Judy's honors class. Spectral evidence, rumors, and fever dream testimonies ran wild until the town finally sobered up. In hindsight, historians agree, the real witch in Salem wasn't anyone rocking a pointy hat. It was mass hysteria itself. Just as perceptions of innocence shaped history, figures like Benedict Arnold remain infamous as sneaky villains in American lore. Picture Benedict Arnold as America's original mustache-twirling villain. Cue sinister laughter echoing over a patriotically ruffled flag. Legend casts Arnold as a lifelong schemer, secretly plotting treason before his baby teeth even appeared. Honestly, if that were true, he probably would have swiped the family silverware with his teething ring. But the facts, those party poopers, tell a different tale. Arnold spent years perched proudly as the eagle atop the patriotic totem pole, clinching critical wins like Saratoga and earning hero high fives from George Washington himself. So unless supervillain boot camp requires you to save the revolution first, the born evil myth doesn't hold water. Here's the cherry on top. Arnold's dark U-turn came after years of feeling snubbed, drowning in debt, and navigating colonial red tape so brutal that even his dog applied for an exit visa. His betrayal shocked everyone because, unlike history teachers, who act like he was born ready to punch a British passport, no one actually saw it coming. Finally, from tales of betrayal to the tragic sinking of the Titanic, which some imagine as nearly empty when disaster struck. Imagine throwing the party of the century and half the guests ghost on you. That's the Titanic myth. A ghost ship drifting empty, crew wandering lonely hallways, ballrooms echoing with silence, and maybe Celine Dion's distant wailing. But buckle up your life jackets, because the truth is packed tighter than steerage on sailing day. The Titanic carried about 2,240 souls, roughly 2/3 of its 3,300 capacity. Sure, some first-class suites sat empty. Turns out being filthy rich doesn't guarantee excitement for maiden voyages. But third class? That deck was jumping. The lower decks buzzed with travelers chasing new lives, or at minimum, 3 hot meals. Sure, cancellations crept up after a coal strike and a last-minute ship swap, but no one's grand staircase was designed for solitude. Survivors remember crowded corridors, not ghost towns. Honestly, for empty, the lifeboats had the real claim. Ask your cousin's birthday party.